I had known Bui Ian since the days we still wore high school uniforms, long before we ever imagined wedding vows and white dresses. We grew up side by side, from awkward teenagers sharing snacks after class to adults building careers and planning a future together. Everyone around us believed we were destined to marry, and I believed it too. But on the night before our wedding, he suddenly died. The news hit me like a blade through the chest. I cried until my body nearly collapsed, my mind drowning in grief so deep I could barely breathe. Yet right in the middle of that despair, strange, floating comments suddenly appeared before my eyes, like invisible messages hanging in the air. Can someone please tell the heroine he's only pretending to be dead? Bui Ian has been secretly keeping a little canary. As soon as she found out he was getting married, she ran overseas. So he staged his death and chased after her. Well, the heroine is crying beside his grave while the canary is crying in bed. I'm dying from anger. When he comes back, the heroine will know nothing and happily marry him anyway. Half a month later, news spread across a city that I had become engaged to the heir of the Kin Lan family. One of Bui Ian's friends rushed over in shock to question me. Brother Bui only died recently. How could you already move on to another man? I answered coldly. He's dead. Am I supposed to stay faithful forever? Please enjoy the audio story. My boyfriend faked his death, so I married the villain instead. At first, when those comments appeared, I truly thought grief had driven me insane. If the heroine goes to the rooftop now, she'll discover the male lead is still alive. I squeezed my eyes shut and opened them again, but the glowing words remained suspended before me. She hasn't eaten or drunk anything for 2 days. Does she even have the strength to climb upstairs? My legs felt unbearably heavy as I slowly dragged myself toward the rooftop staircase. Just one more flight remained when a familiar voice drifted down from above, carrying a teasing laugh. Has my funeral not ended yet? The voice came from Luk Fong's phone, Bui Ian's closest friend. Not yet, Brother An, Luk Fong replied. As for Chi Nyuk, she doesn't suspect anything. She's been busy arranging the funeral. Yesterday she cried until she fainted. She's probably still locked in her room crying right now. Bui Ian chuckled softly. Then comfort her for me. Another voice joined in. It was Tong Dui Tan. But Brother An, have you really fallen for that little canary? You even faked your death just to chase her overseas and dragged all of us into helping you act. The comments had been telling the truth. My fingers trembled violently as I gripped the stair railing, my blood turning ice cold, while Bui Ian spoke again. Whether I'm serious about her or not isn't your concern. Just help me keep this from Chi Nyuk. Luk Fong asked, So, are you still going through with the wedding? Of course. His tone was casual, almost amused. Once I come back, the wedding will happen as planned. But before getting married, I wanted to go crazy for love at least once. The three men burst into laughter together. At that moment, it felt as if every drop of warmth in my body froze solid. I had prayed desperately for him to still be alive. I never imagined the truth would be this cruel. The heroine finally knows. Please wake up and fight back. But I didn't walk out to expose them. Instead, I quietly turned around and stumbled downstairs. Inside the bathroom, I collapsed over the sink and vomited until my stomach cramped. When I looked up, the woman in the mirror looked pale and hollow, her eyes swollen red from endless crying. I splashed cold water across my face again and again. She knows everything and still stays silent. I'm furious. She loves him too deeply. She's enduring this because he promised to come back and marry her. No, maybe she's preparing her revenge. When I walked into the living room, Luk Fong handed me tissues with a face full of fake sympathy. Don't be too sad, sister-in-law. Brother An wouldn't want to see you like this from heaven. I raised my eyes to look directly at him. Tell me honestly, I asked softly. Do you think Bui Ian is really dead? A flicker of panic crossed his face before he forced himself calm again. 1 week earlier, Bui Ian's car had plunged into the river in the middle of the night. The police concluded he had been swept away while trying to escape the sinking vehicle. I had spent sleepless nights waiting beside the riverbank while rescue teams searched the freezing water. They eventually recovered only his coat and shoes. I cried until I fainted. Today was supposed to be our wedding day. I had clutched our framed photograph against my chest, sobbing until I could barely breathe. And now I discovered that everything had been a performance. My grief, my despair, my shattered heart, all of it had merely been entertainment for him. The male lead learned everything except loyalty. I thought this was a sweet romance. Turns out it's poison. The heroine is gorgeous, and he still cheated. Trash. Those floating comments strangely eased the suffocating anger inside my chest. Meanwhile, Luk Fong continued acting concerned. If Brother An knew how much you were suffering, he'd definitely feel heartbroken. How ridiculous. That very morning I had thanked him for helping organize the funeral. I never imagined he had been one of the accomplices all along. Following hints from the comments, I searched online and quickly found the account of the so-called Canary, Tong Chun Chun, a small influencer signed under Bui Ian's media company. Her username was Duo Fei Fei Janzhen. Her newest video had been filmed in London. In the clip, 2 hands intertwined tightly beneath the cold wind. The mole between the man's fingers sent chills racing through me. The caption read, "In the brightest years of our lives, he abandoned an arranged marriage and crossed thousands of miles to find me. Even the wind from a city has followed us to London." The video exploded across social media. Countless comments praised their beautiful love story. This isn't love. She's literally the mistress. Calling the heroine an arranged marriage partner is disgusting. But mine and Bui Ian's relationship had never been arranged. We met in high school. Back then, my parents had intended for me to marry the heir of the Hawk family. But I hated marriages built on benefits and appearances. My own parents had lived that kind of life, smiling lovingly in public while betraying each other in private. I despised it. Then, in 11th grade, Bui Ian sat behind me in class every day, always smiling brightly like an eager puppy. Eventually, I accepted his confession. From school uniforms to tailored suits, from struggling students to successful adults, we had stayed together through everything. We even returned to our old school once to give a speech as the campus's most admired couple. And yet the person I trusted most had secretly built another life behind my back. The girl sweetly called him husband online, posting videos of their intimate daily life together. Every business trip he claimed to have was actually time spent with her. While I stayed awake worrying he was overworking himself, he had been sleeping in another woman's arms. Once, I told him to stop exhausting himself. He smiled gently and held my hand. "I want your parents to feel proud of me. I want to earn enough money to give you a wedding everyone envies." Before the accident, the final message he sent me read, "No matter what happens, Bui Ian will always love you." I had cried countless times reading those words. Now they shattered like bubbles bursting in the air. The male lead even comes back later pretending to have amnesia. The heroine forgives him and marries him anyway. Then she dies miserably. What kind of author writes garbage like this? But now the story has changed. The heroine already knows the truth. I hope she won't repeat the tragedy. I slowly walked downstairs. Bui Ian's mother sat on the sofa clutching his memorial portrait. The moment she saw me, her eyes turned vicious. "If you hadn't begged him to come home, he wouldn't have died," she screamed. "You killed my son." The night of the accident, Bui Ian had been driving back from another city because we planned to try on wedding outfits together. When I first heard he died, I swallowed my own grief just to comfort his mother. She repaid me by shoving me violently away. "You cursed my son to death, you disaster! The heroine needs to run. This family is cursed." In the original story, she blamed herself after being called a jinx. Later, both the husband and mother-in-law abused her until she died. I had never gotten along with his mother, but hearing those comments made me realize something terrifying. This relationship had been doomed from the very beginning. Before everything happened, Bui-in once promised me that after marriage we would never live with his mother. But these past few days, guilt had made me silently endure all her hatred. Now, watching her clutch his fake memorial portrait and cry dramatically, the entire scene suddenly looked absurd, like a pathetic stage play. A laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. His mother exploded instantly. "What are you laughing at?" She lunged toward me, trying to slap me, but Tong Dui-tan hurried over to stop her. "Auntie, calm down. Sister-in-law is just too heartbroken. Her emotions are unstable." Luk Fong also stepped forward. "Sister-in-law, apologize to Auntie." I slowly approached Bui-in's mother. She thought I was about to comfort her and immediately turned away with disgust. "No matter what you say, I'll never forgive you. You and my son weren't even married yet, so don't even think about touching his inheritance." But instead of comforting her, I leaned close to her ear and whispered softly, "Your son deserves what happened to him. And as for you, when are you finally going to follow him?" Her face twisted instantly. Clutching her chest, she collapsed backward onto the sofa. The entire room erupted into panic. "She did this! She killed my son! Ah Fong, call the police!" I looked at her with reddened eyes and spoke quietly. "If Auntie hates me this much, then the only thing I can do is leave the Bui family." Luk Fong hurriedly tried to stop me. "Don't speak out of anger, sister-in-law." I smiled faintly. "There's no need to persuade me. Staying here will only make her suffer more. I've already decided to move out." Luk Fong and Tong Dui-tan exchanged stunned looks. Clearly, none of this had gone according to plan. Quietly, Luk Fong slipped into a corner and texted Bui-in. "Your mom keeps insulting her. Chi Nyuk insists on moving out." Bui-in replied quickly. "My mom's always been difficult. She raised me alone through hardship. Tell Chi Nyuk to tolerate her a little." "But she's really determined to leave." "Then let her go," Bui-in answered casually. "Once I return, getting her back will only take a single sentence." Even though I couldn't hear the messages directly, the floating comments revealed every word to me. So I returned to my room and silently packed my belongings. My best friend, Hak Niem, helped me arrange a moving truck. "Chi Nyuk, are you really okay?" she asked carefully. She had witnessed every moment of my breakdown these past few days. "I'm fine," I answered quietly. "I just want to find a new place as soon as possible." Suddenly she remembered something. "My brother has an empty villa. He's been overseas for years and never stays there. You can live there temporarily until you find somewhere else." The comments exploded again. The villain is finally appearing. The original story barely described him, but honestly, he's my favorite. He kept messaging the heroine, but she never replied. Darkness level plus 1086. Hach Fong? I didn't even have his WeChat. The only contact I still possessed was his old QQ account from middle school. Every few months, that account would randomly send me links. I always assumed it had been hacked, so I never clicked them and muted the notifications entirely. Then, I suddenly noticed the unread message he had sent 1 week ago. "Need help?" That day had been when the rescue team searched the entire city river for Bui-in. Videos of me crying during interviews spread everywhere online. I had never seen Hak Fong's message. After hesitating for a moment, I finally replied politely, "No need, thank you." His response arrived almost instantly. Okay. And somehow, seeing that single word made old memories quietly resurface. I remembered the day Bui Ian confessed to me. He asked me to meet him behind the classroom building. The wind that afternoon had been fierce. As I tucked loose hair behind my ear and looked up, I saw Hach Fong standing alone at the end of the corridor, one hand resting casually against the railing. His expression was calm as he watched me silently. I looked away first. Then I smiled at Bui Ian and said softly, "Okay." When Bui Ian leaned down to kiss my cheek, I glanced back instinctively. The corridor was already empty. Only the trees outside still swayed violently beneath the wind. After several more drinks, I finally returned to the villa close to midnight. The alcohol left my thoughts hazy and slow. I barely noticed that something inside the house felt slightly different. The lights downstairs were dimmer than before, and the air carried a faint, unfamiliar scent, cold and clean, mixed with traces of cedarwood. Exhausted, I climbed the stairs toward my room. After washing my face carelessly, I pushed open the bedroom door and collapsed directly onto the bed. The blanket felt strangely warm, as though someone had been lying there moments earlier. Before my foggy mind could process it, my hand brushed against solid muscle. A man's body. At the same time, a low, sleepy voice sounded beside me. My entire body froze. I shot upright instantly, but before I could scream, a strong hand grabbed my wrist and pulled me back down. Who? The bedside lamp suddenly flicked on. Warm, golden light flooded the room, and directly in front of me was the bare chest of a man. The floating comments exploded immediately. Oh my God, the villain's body is insane. Girl, what are you waiting for? Jump him! He looks so good, I'm losing my mind. The man narrowed his eyes slightly against the sudden brightness. A few loose strands of black hair fell across his forehead, giving his cold face an unexpectedly lazy, dangerous look. Then his gaze landed on me. And he froze too. Chinyuk? It took my brain 2 full seconds to recognize him. Hach Fong. My heartbeat nearly stopped. You're hurting me, I blurted instinctively. Only then did Hach Fong realize he was still gripping my wrist tightly. He immediately released me, his expression turning awkward for the first time since I'd ever known him. Then, almost hurriedly, he grabbed the blanket and pulled it over my shoulders. Only afterward did I notice the thin strap of my nightdress had slipped halfway down my arm. The tips of his ears turned faintly red. Without another word, he quickly turned around and began pulling on the clothes scattered nearby. His movements, usually calm and composed, now looked strangely rushed. Only then did I finally understand. It wasn't that I had entered the wrong room. This room had always been locked before tonight. Somehow, tonight, it had been left open. I cleared my throat awkwardly. Niam said I could stay here temporarily. I'm not familiar with the house yet, so I accidentally opened the wrong room. Hach Fong buttoned his shirt halfway before turning back toward me. Under the dim light, several buttons near his collar remained undone, exposing sharp collarbones and the faint outline of lean muscle beneath his shirt. His expression had already returned to its usual calm, unreadable state. It's fine, he said quietly. You can continue staying here. Then after a brief pause, he added, I'll move back to the main house. The comments immediately screamed again. On the outside, calm and gentlemanly. On the inside, please ask me to stay. He probably screamed into a pillow after she left. I'm already imagining him in a suit pinning her against the wall and kissing her until she cries. Another comment floated past. In the original story, the villain locks her up after she runs away and kisses her senseless. I stared at those comments in disbelief. Were these people hallucinating? Because the man standing before me right now looked nothing like some obsessive psychopath. In fact, his first reaction upon learning I was staying here had been to leave. "You don't need to go," I said finally. "It's already late, and this is your house." His hand paused slightly while fastening his watch. For a brief second, something unreadable flickered through his eyes. Then he lowered his gaze calmly again. "All right." I quickly climbed off the bed, embarrassed beyond words. "Sorry for waking you. I'll go back to my room now." The next morning, I assumed Hach Fong had already left, but when I walked downstairs, still half asleep, I found him sitting calmly at the dining table reading documents beneath the morning sunlight. Hearing my footsteps, he looked up. "Good morning." For a brief moment, the teenage boy from years ago overlapped with the cold, elegant man sitting before me now. I stood there silently for a second before smiling faintly. "Good morning, Hach Fong." One corner of his lips curved upward. "You recognized me perfectly last night," he said lightly. "Did you forget me again this morning?" And only then did I notice the faint red marks still lingering around my wrist where he had grabbed me earlier. I lifted my hand slightly. "You're surprisingly strong." A trace of guilt crossed his face. "Sorry," he said quietly. "Last night I thought you were a thief." The floating comments immediately burst into chaos again. "Not a thief? She literally stole your heart years ago. Stop pretending, Hach Fong. Last night after she left, don't think we didn't see you lying in the bed she touched." Heat rose instantly to my ears. I decisively ignored the comments. "Do you want milk?" Hach Fong suddenly asked. I blinked. "Sure." He stood up and placed a warm bottle of milk in front of me before sliding over a croissant as well. "My assistant accidentally bought an extra breakfast set this morning." "Thank you." The two of us sat across from each other in silence for a while. Then Hach Fong spoke again. "I'll probably stay here temporarily for work. There's a new project nearby." "If it bothers you..." "It doesn't," I interrupted gently. "This is your house to begin with. I'll move out once I find another place." Later that day, I told Hach Niem that her brother had suddenly returned. She immediately exploded in the group chat. "What? I didn't even know he came back to China. Last month, he literally told me he wasn't returning until after New Year." I stared at the messages for a moment before replying calmly. "It's fine. I was just confirming." A few minutes later, another message from her arrived. "I asked Grandpa already. He really does have a new project nearby, but apparently, he personally requested this project himself." I paused slightly while reading that line. Personally requested it? Before I could think further, my mother suddenly called. "Sweetheart," she said cheerfully, "your birthday is in 2 days. Your father and I already booked the banquet hall at Yunshi Hotel. Remember to dress beautifully." Originally, Bui Ian and I had planned to celebrate my birthday overseas during our honeymoon. Now that future had vanished completely. My parents had never approved of my relationship with him anyway. After hearing about his death, they simply transferred money into my account and told me not to torture myself over a man. Practical, cold, efficient, exactly like the wealthy circles we belonged to. After ending the call, I noticed a small red notification blinking on WeChat. Hach Fong had sent me a friend request. I hesitated briefly before accepting it. His profile picture was simple. A bright, full moon suspended in a dark, endless sky, like light tearing through deep loneliness. The comments instantly reappeared. "You know what that moon means, right?" Applause for the man who spent years sending random QQ links just to check whether the heroine had deleted him. He searched her name on WeChat hundreds of times. And today, he finally gathered enough courage to send the request. I silently opened his profile. Most of his posts were work-related, mixed with occasional photos of surfing, skydiving, and racing. Back in high school, there had actually been more girls chasing Hach Fong than Bui Yin. The young master of the Hach family had always stood out like someone born beneath a spotlight. Proud, brilliant, impossible to ignore. Maybe that was why I had instinctively avoided him. He reminded me too much of my father. Powerful men surrounded by endless admirers, men who could never truly belong to only one woman. After I started dating Bui Yin, I rarely saw Hak Fong at school anymore. Later I heard he transferred into an international program to prepare for studying abroad. At the time, I had secretly felt relieved. Eventually, after my long relationship with Bui Yin became stable, the old marriage arrangement between the Hak and Chi families quietly disappeared as well. And yet now, according to those floating comments, if I ignored Hak Fong too long, he would supposedly darken, lock me away, and do all sorts of terrifying things. I glanced toward the living room where he stood, answering a business call beneath the morning sunlight. Calm, reserved, elegant. No matter how I looked at him, I simply couldn't connect those absurd comments with the man before me. 2 days later, my birthday banquet arrived. By evening, the entire Yunchi Hotel glittered beneath layers of crystal chandeliers and golden lights. Luxury cars lined the entrance one after another, while countless members of a city's upper class gathered inside the grand ballroom. I stood backstage in a silver evening gown, quietly adjusting the strings of my violin. "Ready?" my mother asked softly. I nodded. The moment I stepped onto the stage, the noise inside the ballroom gradually faded away. Music flowed slowly from beneath my fingertips. The melody rose, gentle and clear beneath the dazzling lights, drifting across the enormous hall like water under moonlight. Countless eyes followed me as I played, but for the first time in a long while, my heart felt unexpectedly calm. When the final note ended, applause instantly thundered throughout the ballroom. "That's the Chi family's daughter? She's even prettier in person. She looks like a celebrity. But didn't her fiancé just die recently? I saw the interview video online. Even crying, she looked heartbreakingly beautiful." The floating comments drifted across my vision again. "These random background characters sound fake. That's because we're reading text instead of watching a drama. But honestly, the heroine is incredible. The male lead only looked special because she supported him." I lowered my violin and stepped off the stage. The moment I entered the crowd, however, I spotted a familiar face. Luk Fong. I froze slightly. I had never invited him. Yet there he stood among the guests, awkwardly waving toward me. "Sister-in-law." "Don't call me that," I interrupted coldly. "I never married him." His expression stiffened instantly. "Right, sorry." For a moment, he scratched his head awkwardly before lifting the gift box in his hands. "Yesterday, while organizing Brother Bui's belongings, we found the birthday gift he prepared for you earlier. I brought it over for him." The box was exquisitely wrapped, tied with a dark ribbon. Attached to it was a small, handwritten card. "To my beloved wife." One glance was enough to tell the handwriting wasn't even Bui Yin's. The comments immediately exploded. "Oh my God, don't tell me she's about to cry emotionally." The so-called sorting belongings was literally just Bui Yin sending him out shopping last night. I smiled faintly. "Leave it there." Luk Fong blinked in surprise. "You're not opening it?" "There are too many gifts tonight," I replied casually. "I won't finish opening them anyway." Without waiting for his reaction, I turned and walked away. Behind me, I could already imagine him secretly reporting everything back to Bui Yin. Sure enough, the floating comments soon revealed the conversation. "Brother Bui, sister-in-law doesn't seem interested in your gift." Bui Yin immediately replied, "Are you stupid? Chi Nyurk cares deeply about emotions. If she opened the gift and cried in front of everyone, wouldn't that embarrass her?" "Right," Luk Fong answered obediently. "You understand her best," someone else chimed in. "I heard tonight's banquet is actually the Chi family looking for a marriage alliance." "Brother Bui, aren't you worried?" There are plenty of young elites there. Nonsense, Bu Yin scoffed confidently. Chi Nyuk hates marriages based on Li. None of those men stand a chance. I almost laughed out loud. Even now, he still believed he understood me perfectly. The ballroom gradually grew more crowded as guests continued arriving one after another. Then suddenly, the atmosphere shifted subtly. People began turning toward the entrance. I looked up instinctively. Hach Fong had arrived. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that emphasized his tall frame and broad shoulders. The top buttons of his shirt remained slightly open, revealing sharp collarbones beneath the soft light. His expression was calm as always, yet his presence alone drew attention effortlessly. Beside him stood his grandfather. The old man exchanged several words with mine before smiling warmly and leading Hach Fong toward me. "Happy birthday," Hach Fong said softly. His gaze settled on me for a brief second longer than necessary. I raised my glass lightly. "Thank you." After several rounds of polite conversation, Grandpa Hach suddenly laughed. "Young people should spend more time together. Why don't the two of you go talk upstairs?" The rooftop garden above the hotel was quiet compared to the noisy ballroom below. Night wind brushed gently through the roses, while city lights stretched endlessly beyond the railing. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Hach Fong broke the silence first. "If you don't want this marriage arrangement," he said calmly, "you don't need to agree." The comments instantly appeared again. Listen to his mouth saying no while his heart screams yes. If she rejects him right now, he'll probably go insane. He cried for 3 whole days after watching her accept another guy's confession back in high school. My fingers tightened slightly around the champagne glass. Then slowly, I smiled. "It's all right," I said quietly. "I'm willing." Pleasure cooperating with you. For the first time that night, Hach Fong's composure visibly faltered. His eyes lowered briefly before he reached out and took my hand. His palm felt warm. Then suddenly, before I could react, he gently pulled me into his arms. At the same moment, countless camera flashes exploded around us from below. I stiffened instinctively. Near my ear, his low voice sounded softly. "If we're cooperating," he murmured, "we should at least look convincing." After several seconds, I finally understood, so I slowly lifted my arms and lightly wrapped them around his waist, resting my forehead briefly against his chest. The cameras flashed even more wildly. That single photograph spread across a city before the night even ended. The engagement between the Hach and Chi families was officially confirmed almost immediately afterward. And not long after, preparations for the wedding began. At the end of the banquet, however, I once again saw Luk Fong and Tong Dui Tan waiting outside. Both of them looked terrible. The floating comments sighed dramatically. These two really stick to the male lead like leeches. She never invited them, yet they still came and waited outside. The moment they saw me, they immediately hurried over. Luk Fong frowned deeply. "Chi Nyuk, Brother Bui only just died. How could you move on this quickly?" I looked at him coldly. "He's dead," I replied calmly. "Am I supposed to stay loyal forever?" Tong Dui Tan suddenly stepped forward anxiously. "Actually, Brother Bui might still..." But Luk Fong immediately grabbed his arm to stop him. Still, he continued stubbornly. "But isn't this too much? Don't you feel guilty at all?" "The police already said there's a chance Brother Bui survived." "If you feel that guilty," I interrupted softly, "then when he comes back alive, why don't the two of you marry him yourselves?" Silence. Luk Fong froze completely. Tong Dui Tan nearly choked. At that moment, steady footsteps sounded behind me. Hach Fong approached slowly, with several bodyguards following behind him. Under the lights, his expression remained calm, but his eyes were noticeably cold. "Is there a problem?" he asked quietly. Tong Jui Tan instantly lowered his head. No, we were only here to congratulate her. Then leave. His voice wasn't loud, but the pressure behind those two words was enough to make both men retreat immediately. As they walked away, the floating comments reappeared once more. She definitely knows something. Hurry up and call Bui Ian already. If he doesn't return soon, the heroine's really going to marry someone else. You call him. No way. Did you see Hak Fong's eyes just now? Terrifying. That same night, news of the marriage alliance between the Hak and Chi families exploded across every trending topic in a city, and somewhere far away in Europe. Bui Ian saw it too. Inside a luxury apartment in London, Bui Ian stared at the engagement photo on his phone in complete disbelief. In the picture, I stood wrapped in Hak Fong's arms beneath dazzling lights, my hand resting lightly against his chest, while our eyes met quietly in the middle of countless flashing cameras. The intimacy between us looked painfully real. Bui Ian's face darkened instantly. He shoved the woman leaning against his shoulder aside so abruptly that Tong Chun Chun nearly fell from the sofa. "What are you doing?" she snapped. But he was already standing up, his expression frighteningly ugly as he zoomed in on the photo again and again. His breathing became heavier. Tong Chun Chun glanced at the screen and immediately froze. She got engaged? Her voice carried disbelief but also faint panic. You said she loved you more than anything. She does, Bui Ian answered immediately, almost instinctively. She only agreed because she thinks I'm dead. He began stuffing clothes into his suitcase with agitated movements. I need to go back. Tong Chun Chun hurried after him. Didn't you say you'd stay with me a few more days? Her eyes quickly turned red as she grabbed his arm. What's wrong? Are you really that eager to return to that suffocating marriage? Bui Ian shook her hand off impatiently. If I don't go back now, someone else will steal my wife. The floating comments appeared instantly. The audacity is insane. Sir, you cheated first. He still thinks the heroine belongs to him, Tong Chun. Chun bit her lip hard before forcing herself to smile sweetly again. Fine, she said softly. Then I'll go back with you. She deliberately emphasized the words. I recently got invited onto a dating reality show in China anyway. Maybe I'll become famous. Clearly, she was trying to provoke jealousy, but Bui Ian barely reacted. Good for you. That indifferent response made her expression stiffen immediately. Meanwhile, Bui Ian was already booking flights and rushing toward the airport. During the drive there, his thoughts gradually calmed. Surely Chinyurk only agreed to the engagement because she believed he was dead. Once he returned and revealed himself, everything would go back to normal. After all, she loved him too much to leave. Confident again, he immediately called Luk Fong. Why are you panicking? He scoffed. The second Chinyurk finds out I'm alive, she'll cancel the engagement herself. Really? Luk Fong asked uncertainly. Of course, Bui Ian sneered coldly. Back in high school, I already hated Hak Fong. I was dating Chinyurk, yet that guy kept secretly staring at her. Imagine how ridiculous he'll look if I steal the bride at the wedding. The comments nearly died laughing. The male lead really thinks he's filming a romance drama. Someone please wake him up. But Bui Ian never even made it to the wedding day. The moment his plane landed back in China, he immediately tried calling me. As long as I heard his voice, he believed I would abandon everything and run back to him without hesitation. But instead, a cold mechanical voice answered him. The number you have dialed does not exist. For the first time, genuine panic crossed his face. The news about my engagement had already spread everywhere across a city, but the actual wedding location remained strictly private. No matter how desperately he searched online, he couldn't find it. Only on the wedding morning did he finally manage to learn the church location through connections. On the way there, he rehearsed countless dramatic scenarios in his head. He imagined himself pushing open the doors in front of the entire elite circle, grabbing my hand and taking me away while everyone watched in shock. Maybe the moment would even trend online. Maybe he'd become internet famous afterward. One floating comment summed it up perfectly. Everything inside this trash man's brain is garbage. By the time Bui Ian finally reached the church, however, reality hit him hard. Security guards surrounded the entrance so tightly that he couldn't even get near the doors. "I'm Chi Nyurk's fiancé," he shouted furiously while struggling against them. "Let me in!" The guards stared at him for several seconds before bursting into laughter. "Everyone knows today is the wedding of young Master Hak and Miss Chi. Which psychiatric hospital did you escape from?" Bu Yin's face turned bright red with humiliation. Unable to force his way inside, he could only sit helplessly outside beneath the blazing sun while the ceremony continued without him. Hours later, the church doors finally opened. I stepped outside wearing a white wedding dress. For a brief moment, Bu Yin completely froze. I looked even more beautiful than he remembered. But standing beside me was Hak Fong. Tall, elegant, calm. The position beside me that once belonged to Bu Yin now belonged entirely to another man. Hatred surged violently through him. That should have been him. Only him. He desperately raised his voice. "Chi Nyuk! Chi Nyuk!" But the joyful noise surrounding the wedding drowned him out completely. Then suddenly, just before entering the car, I turned my head slightly. Our eyes met across the distance. In that instant, Bui Yin became certain. As long as I recognized him, I would abandon everything and run back to him. But my gaze merely passed over him indifferently, cold, unfamiliar. Then I calmly entered the car beside Hak Fong without another glance. The floating comments immediately exploded. "Oh, that hurt." She saw him. She absolutely saw him. But she looked at him like garbage. Bui Yin stood frozen on the roadside as the wedding convoy slowly disappeared from sight. His entire body felt numb, but even then, he still refused to believe it. "She probably didn't recognize me," he muttered hoarsely to himself. "That's all. Even if she's married now, she can still divorce him later. A husband without love can never beat a first love who came back from the dead." Clinging desperately to that belief, he returned home. The moment he entered the Bui family villa, however, his mother rushed toward him, loudly. "Did you see the news? That shameless Chi girl married another man. I told you she was never loyal." Bui Yin frowned instantly. "She only married because she thinks I'm dead. If she knew the truth, she'd divorce him immediately." Then suddenly his expression changed. "Where are all the funeral photos? Take them down already. Looking at them is annoying." He impatiently pushed open the bedroom door and froze. The room was a complete mess. Broken photo frames littered the floor. The sunset photograph I once treasured had shattered completely. Every single couple photo hanging on the wall had been ripped apart. Bu Yan's face darkened instantly. "Mom!" He stormed downstairs furiously. "Did you do this?" His mother looked confused. "What?" "If you hate Chi Nyurk that much, curse her all you want. Why destroy my things?" "I didn't touch any of it," she shouted back angrily. "That little bitch did it herself." Bui Ian refused to believe her. "Then explain why her face was blacked out in every photo. How could she do that to herself?" The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Finally, he snapped completely. "You should go back to the countryside. I never should have brought you here in the first place. Maybe if you hadn't driven Chi Nyurk away, she wouldn't have married someone else so quickly." His mother collapsed onto the floor in shock. The floating comments immediately celebrated wildly. "Internal family war. This is karma. The heroine only removed herself from the photos so she could erase him completely. But this idiot still thinks his mother did it. The truth was, on the wedding day, I had seen Bui Yin, clearly. From inside the car, through the reflection in the rearview mirror, I watched him struggle desperately against the security guards outside the church gates. His hair was messy from the wind, his clothes wrinkled, his face pale beneath the scorching sunlight as he shouted my name again and again. Chi Nyuk! Chi Nyuk! He looked ridiculous, like a clown performing in the middle of someone else's celebration. Beside me, Hak Fong loosened his tie slightly and glanced over. "What are you looking at?" he asked quietly. I curved my lips faintly. "A clown." For a brief second, Hak Fong stared at me. Then the corners of his lips slowly lifted too. "Don't just look at the clown," he murmured softly. "Look at me sometimes too." My heartbeat unexpectedly skipped. The floating comments instantly lost control. "He's so smooth." "Someone save me, I'm dying." "The villain wins without even trying." That night, our wedding room overflowed with the faint scent of roses and alcohol. Hak Fong had been forced to drink far too much during the banquet downstairs. By the time we returned upstairs, a thin flush already colored the edges of his ears and neck. He loosened his tie carelessly, unbuttoned several buttons of his shirt, then leaned back against the bed. Warm light spilled across his sharp jawline and exposed collarbones. His chest rose and fell slowly beneath the half-open shirt, carrying a dangerous kind of attraction impossible to ignore. My breathing suddenly became uneven. Meanwhile, he remained completely still, eyes lowered as though genuinely drunk. I quietly picked up my pajamas and tried slipping past him toward the bathroom, but the moment I walked by, he suddenly grabbed my wrist. With one light pull, I lost balance and fell directly onto him. My palms landed against his chest, hot, firm. The scent of alcohol wrapped around me instantly. "Where are you going?" he asked in a low voice. "To shower. Can I kiss you first?" The directness of the question stunned me for a moment. Then softly, almost unconsciously, I answered, "Okay." The instant permission left my lips. Hak Fong's eyes darkened. He lowered his head and kissed me gently at first, carefully, patiently, as though he had waited far too long for this moment. But after only seconds, the kiss deepened uncontrollably. His fingers tightened around my waist while his breathing gradually grew heavier. I was pressed into the mattress beneath him until my mind turned dizzy from lack of air. Finally, I pushed weakly against his chest. "Hak Fong, I want to shower first." "All right," he answered immediately. But instead of letting me go, he simply lifted me directly into his arms and carried me toward the bathroom. I blinked in confusion. "I can walk myself." "I know." "Then why are you still carrying me?" His voice became lower near my ear. "Because I'm drunk. And I need my wife to help me." The floating comments completely exploded. "What kind of drunk excuse is this?" "He's pretending, absolutely pretending. Look at this shameless man." I tried refusing again, but my answer disappeared beneath the sound of water spilling onto the bathroom floor. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the curtains. I woke slowly, only to realize someone's arms were wrapped tightly around my waist from behind. Warm breathing brushed lightly against the back of my neck. Then memories from last night flashed violently through my mind. My face instantly burned. The floating comments screamed louder than ever. "Wait, what?" I clicked next chapter and suddenly they're already in bed together? Author, where are my 10,000 words of detailed scenes? As though sensing movement, Hak Fong slowly opened his eyes. Unlike me, his expression looked incredibly calm. "Morning," he murmured lazily. I immediately buried half my face beneath the blanket in embarrassment. His low laughter sounded softly above my head. Not long afterward, Hachfong temporarily pushed aside most of his work and took me overseas for our honeymoon. Far away from a city, everything finally became peaceful. No gossip, no betrayal, no memories suffocating me at every corner. During the first few nights, however, I still woke repeatedly from nightmares. Sometimes I dreamed about standing alone beside the river where Bui Ian's accident happened. Sometimes I dreamed of wedding halls collapsing into darkness while countless strangers pointed at me and laughed. Every time I woke, my face was wet with tears. At first, Hak Fong clearly didn't know how to comfort people. He would sit stiffly beside me for several seconds before awkwardly pulling me into his arms, gently kissing away the tears beneath my eyes. "Don't cry," he would whisper quietly. "There's nothing worth crying over anymore." Gradually, though, he became better at it. Much better. Eventually, his methods of comforting me became significantly less innocent. The floating comments summarized it perfectly. The villain discovered physical therapy. Turns out exhausting someone completely really does cure insomnia. By the time we returned to China, I had stopped dreaming about Bui Ian altogether. Unfortunately, the internet had not. The moment we appeared publicly again, our marriage immediately climbed back onto trending searches. Wasn't her fiancé supposed to have died recently? I remember seeing her crying beside the river. She remarried insanely fast. Apparently, the dead fiancé survived and returned only to find her already married. The online criticism came flooding back almost immediately. Countless strangers called me heartless, unfaithful, cold-blooded. Originally, I planned to expose everything myself using the evidence I had prepared long ago. But before I could act, every related topic suddenly vanished overnight. Search results disappeared completely. Articles were deleted one after another. The floating comments instantly reacted. The villain moved first. He cleaned the entire internet. Sure enough, sitting inside his office later that day, Hak Fong merely glanced up from his documents calmly. "You don't need to care about those people," he said lightly. "I already handled it." The simple sentence carried overwhelming reassurance. 2 days later, however, I finally saw Bui Ian again. He was waiting outside my company building. Compared to before, he looked terrifyingly exhausted. His cheeks had sunken noticeably, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. The moment he saw me, his eyes instantly turned red. "Nyuk Nyuk, it's me. It's Bui Ian." I looked at him expressionlessly. For several seconds, he stared blankly at my cold reaction before forcing out a strained smile. "That's right. I'm alive. I was swept downstream after the accident and rescued by villagers. Then I lost my memory for a while. So you conveniently forgot everything?" I interrupted calmly. "You want to say you only recovered your memory recently? Isn't that right?" Bui Ian froze completely. The floating comments nearly died laughing. "She already finished reciting your script for you. The male lead thinks he's starring in a tragic romance drama." He stepped forward emotionally. "If you already knew I was alive, why didn't you come find me?" I almost laughed. Instead, I looked at him quietly. "Do you know what everyone online says about me now? They say I remarried immediately after my fiancé died. They curse me every day. But it doesn't matter," he hurriedly continued. "I know your family forced you. So divorce him. Then marry me instead." For several seconds, I simply stared at him. The man standing in front of me was someone I had loved for nearly 10 years, someone I once imagined growing old beside, someone whose name had once been tied so tightly to my future that I couldn't picture life without him. And yet now, looking at him again, I felt nothing except disgust. Pure exhaustion. Pure disappointment. I slowly stepped backward, increasing the distance between us. "No," That single word instantly shattered the last trace of confidence in Bui Ian's eyes. He froze. What? I said no. My voice remained calm, almost indifferent. Stop pretending to be deeply in love. Aren't you tired of acting? His face paled. Nyuk Nyuk, I know you're angry, but listen to me. Was it fun? I interrupted softly. He stopped speaking. I looked directly into his eyes. Pretending to die so you could run overseas and sleep with your little mistress. Was it exciting? The color drained completely from his face. His pupils trembled violently. You know? So you do remember. I gave a faint laugh. I should probably thank Luk Fong and Tong Dui Tan. Without them, I might still be stupid enough to believe you. Bui Ian's breathing immediately became chaotic. No, it's not like that. It was just temporary. I only lost control for a while. I always planned to come back and marry you. The floating comments exploded again. Classic cheating man logic. He cheated physically, but emotionally he still belongs to the heroine. How touching. I looked at him quietly. Do you know what's funniest? You spent all this time believing I couldn't live without you. But the moment I learned the truth, I realized losing you wasn't painful at all. It was freedom. Bui Ian's expression cracked completely. For the first time, genuine panic appeared in his eyes. He grabbed my wrist desperately. Nyuk Nyuk, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong now. I'll cut ties with her immediately. I'll explain everything publicly. I'll kneel if you want me to. His voice became hoarse with desperation. I can't lose you. But before I could respond, another hand suddenly appeared and forcefully removed his grip from my wrist. The atmosphere instantly turned cold. Hak Fong stood beside me. His expression remained calm, but the darkness in his eyes made Bui Ian instinctively step backward. Several bodyguards stood behind him. Clearly he had arrived earlier than expected. Hak Fong lowered his gaze briefly toward the red marks forming on my wrist before speaking quietly. I believe, he said softly. My wife already made herself very clear. The word wife struck Bui Ian like a knife. His face twisted instantly. She only married you because she thought I was dead. She doesn't love you, the floating comment screamed. Oh, here we go. The insecure ex-boyfriend arc begins. Hach Fong, however, didn't react emotionally at all. Instead, he simply adjusted the cuff of his sleeve slowly before answering. And? That single word nearly suffocated Bui Ian. Hak Fong's gaze finally lifted toward him fully. Cold, sharp, almost merciless. She chose me. That alone is enough. Bui Ian's fists tightened violently. You think you've won? Hak Fong, she loved me for 10 years. And now? Hak Fong asked calmly. Silence. Every word landed like a blade. Bui Ian's eyes reddened completely. He suddenly raised his fist and lunged forward. But before he could even touch Hak Fong, the bodyguards instantly restrained him and forced him backward. Let me go! Chi Nyuk, you know I love you. His voice cracked desperately. I only made one mistake. The floating comments burst into laughter. One mistake? Sir, you faked your death, cheated, manipulated her grief, and publicly humiliated her. That's a whole crime package. I looked at him one final time. Strangely enough, I no longer felt anger anymore, only pity. You should stop appearing in front of me, I said quietly. Seeing you makes me feel dirty. Those words completely destroyed him. His struggles abruptly stopped. For several seconds, Bui Ian simply stood there motionless, while the bodyguards restrained him, staring at me as though he no longer recognized the woman before him. Then, slowly, his eyes filled with despair. Hak Fong wrapped one arm naturally around my waist. Let's go home, he said softly. I nodded. As we turned away together, Buiin's broken voice echoed weakly behind us. Chi Nyuk. But this time, I never looked back. That night, Hak Fong was unusually quiet. After dinner, he worked inside his study for several hours without speaking much. But the moment we returned to the bedroom, the calm restraint he maintained all evening finally snapped. The floating comments instantly panicked. Oh no. The villain's jealousy meter just exploded. The moment the bedroom door closed, Hak Fong suddenly grabbed my wrist and pressed me lightly against the wall. His breathing was noticeably heavier than usual. What? I blinked in confusion. He stared at me silently for several seconds before finally speaking. Today, he said slowly, you called me husband in front of him. His voice sounded low and dangerous. But when we're alone... You've never called me that before. I froze, then suddenly realized he was genuinely upset about this. The comments completely lost control. He's jealous over one word. This man is secretly insane. Hak Fong lowered his head slightly until his forehead nearly touched mine. Why? I couldn't help laughing softly. Because you never said you wanted me to. The moment those words left my mouth, something inside his expression changed instantly, dangerously. His hand tightened slightly around my waist. Then say it now. Call me husband. The calm, composed President Hotch from outside no longer existed. The man before me now looked almost unfairly intense. I tried holding back laughter, but eventually, under his unwavering stare, I gave in quietly. Husband. For a second, Hak Fong completely stopped moving. Then he suddenly kissed me hard enough to steal my breath away. The floating comments screamed non-stop. He won! The villain won everything! Later that night, tangled sheets covered the floor while my voice had already become hoarse from exhaustion. Meanwhile, Hak Fong still held me tightly against his chest, kissing the sweat-damp hair away from my forehead with unusual tenderness. His breathing remained uneven, but his voice was impossibly gentle. I'm better than him, he murmured quietly against my skin. I'm more obedient, so choose me. Even half-conscious from exhaustion, I still couldn't stop laughing softly. What kind of comparison was that? Yet somehow, it made my chest ache unexpectedly. Sometime deep into the night, just before sleep finally pulled me under, I vaguely heard Hak Fong whisper beside my ear, I love you, very softly, like a secret he had hidden for far too many years.